Hey everyone, it's Anthony. And today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to try to answer a question from Twitter. Dimpo wants to know where they can find an example of using an output binding with the new .NET 5 isolated model for Azure Functions. And they're specifically interested in using SignalR. So I think we can help with that. So let's see if we can do a walkthrough of how to do this. So the first thing that we probably want to do is in our Azure portal, we're going to create a SignalR instance. We do this by saying create resource, search for SignalR. There it is. Say create. And we need a resource group. So we're going to say Anthony SignalR. Need to give it the name again. Oh no, looks like I've already tried this. It's Anthony SignalR test. Is that going to work? Great. Okay. I'll choose a region that's really close to me. And SignalR is available in two tiers. There's a standard tier and a free tier. So today we're just going to use the free one. And for it to work with Azure Functions, we have to use the serverless mode. That's what we're going to choose here. I'm going to say create. And just let it go off and create the SignalR instance. So now I have VS Code open, and let's make sure that we have a few things. So we'll go to the extensions panel and search for Azure Functions and make sure that we have the Azure Functions extension installed and that we have the latest version, which is 1.3.0. That's the one with .NET 5 Azure Functions support. Looks like I have that there. So next thing I want to try to find out is, or that I want to confirm is if I have the latest version of Azure Functions Core Tools installed. So I'll type func -- version, and it looks like I do. And then also check .NET as well to make sure I have .NET 5. And I do. So I think we're ready to go. So to I guess go through the SignalR in Azure Functions and .NET 5, we're going to look at how we can build the same app that we have in this quick start that's currently using .NET Core 3.1. And we'll pretty much be doing the same thing. So we just did the creation of the SignalR resource. And we're going to be creating a couple of functions. One is going to be called negotiate, and that's going to be used by SignalR in the browser to basically call an HTTP endpoint, which will be our Azure function. And that endpoint needs to return a token for the SignalR library to be able to use and talk to the SignalR service. And then the second function that we're going to write is called message or messages or send message. That's going to be another HTTP endpoint for our kind of like our app. In this case, since we're doing a SignalR service demo, it'll be a chat app. And so whenever somebody types in this box here, we're just going to make a post to an Azure function, and that Azure function is going to go and turn around and take that message and send it off to SignalR, and SignalR service is going to go and send that message in real time to everyone, basically all the browsers that are connected. So that's what we're going to build, and yeah, let's do that. So back in our VS Code, we are going to first create an Azure Functions project. And I'm going to choose a folder to create the project in. I want C#. And you can see that we now have the .NET 5 isolated choice for the .NET runtime. So we're going to choose that. We're going to choose an HTTP trigger. And like I was saying before, we're going to call this negotiate. Negotiate. And that's fine. That's fine as well. We'll just take all the defaults. So it's going to go off and scaffold out our function. So a .NET 5 function looks very much like a .NET Core 3.1 function. And I'll try my best to kind of call out some of the differences. Actually, one of the things I'll probably call out right away is that in the past, well, not really in the past, in the present, when you build a .NET Core 3.1 app, you would look for a library called like SignalR service. Yeah, Microsoft Azure Web Jobs extensions SignalR service. With the new .NET 5 isolated model, this extension is still going to be running in the in the main functions host, but we don't actually install this extension ourselves. What we want to install is another package, and I'll search for Azure Functions SignalR service, and you can see that there's one right here, and this one's called Microsoft Azure Functions Worker Extensions SignalR service. And this is kind of like a wrapper around the other one that I showed you. But this will be the part that actually that we'll actually be using in our function app. I'll copy the command and head over here and open up my terminal, paste the command in to install the package. It's going to go off and install it. That's all good. So now this is just a plain HTTP trigger function. One thing I want to call out is that in .NET 5, we have a new way of getting the logger. We can just ask, or basically go to the context that is passed into every function and get a logger that way. We can also do it via dependency injection if this happens to be not a static class. We can actually inject an iLogger in there as well, I believe. But one thing that we cannot do is in the past, we were able to ask for an iLogger here. This will no longer work. So that's something to keep in mind. And so in order to use SignalR service, we'll be using that binding that we just pulled in. So I'm just going to do some quick formatting here. You can see that this function is an HTTP trigger function, just like we did before. Another thing I want to call out is that we have a slightly different data type now for getting the request and the response. So let's pull in this thing called a SignalR connection info input binding. And I think it expects like a hub name or something. Yeah, hub name equals, and a hub in SignalR is basically like a namespace. So your goal is to make sure that this negotiate function, as well as the other thing that you build, the function that sends a message, both use the same hub name, so that the sender and the receivers are both talking over the same thing, so the receivers can receive the messages. So we can call it anything we want. I'm just going to call it chat. And then we'll just take the input as a string, and then we'll call it connection info. Okay, so we've already kind of scaffolded out the HTTP response here. So the connection info, I happen to know that it's a piece of JSON. So I'm going to change this to application JSON. And then instead of writing this welcome message, we'll write out the connection info. And that's it. I think it's going to work. So one thing that we need to do before we can start this and try it out is we'll hop over here and go to our Azure portal. Looks like the SignalR service instance has been created. And I'm going to go and grab the key, the connection string. So hopefully by the time I post this video, I would have deleted the SignalR service instance. Otherwise, yeah, you all feel free to grab the key and party on that. So I need to add that connection string as an app setting. It's going to be called Azure SignalR connection string. Probably could have been a shorter name, but whoever came up with that name likes long names. That was me. And we'll paste that in. All right, so now that we have that set, we have the negotiate function. So let's go ahead and press F5. Actually, we need to set a breakpoint here and see what happens. We'll press F5. It's going to start. it's building our app, and then it's going to start the function app using Functions Core Tools. And then we'll go ahead and grab this link. Go to my browser. Where's my browser? It's over here. Paste that in. Whoa. Okay, you can see we hit the breakpoint. And so if I go and check, what the connection string, or sorry, the connection info looks like, whoops, you can see that, it's a bunch of JSON. And I'm just going to go and continue. And then you can see that it's been sent back to the browser. And we don't have to worry about the contents of this thing at all. We just need this endpoint. And this endpoint is just going to be magically called by the SignalR SDK that's going to be running in the chat app. And it's going to understand that that this is the URL to the actual SignalR service instance that it needs to connect to, as well as it's going to know that this is the token that it's going to use to talk to it. So that's it. So it looks like that part's going to work. We're going to stop this. And we'll do one more thing, which is create the other function that's going to send the messages. And we're going to go ahead and create a new function. Also going to be an HTTP trigger function. I believe the path needs to be messages. So I'll call the function that, and I'll just take all the defaults again. And just like before, we now have an HTTP trigger function. So instead of returning a response, we're not going to do that anymore. We can if we want, but we don't need to. So one of the new things that we do with the new .NET 5 isolated model is that there's a slightly different way of basically talking to output bindings and working with output bindings. In the past, you would actually bring in a thing called an iasync collector as one of the parameters. And we've kind of felt that it was a little bit weird. You're kind of writing a function, but then using something that's passed in as a parameter to kind of return stuff, and it's kind of odd. So what we're going to do instead with what we support instead in .NET 5 is that we're just going to let you return stuff. So if you just need to return one thing, you just have to just return it. So if you only have one output binding that you need to talk to, you just have to define it at the function level. And that's what we're going to do here. And then I think this is going to take, the SignalR output binding is going to take a hub name as well. And we're going to call that chat. Okay, that's great. And then there's a couple things that we got to do here. So one thing is we need to grab the message. So for our message equals, and I think we can get it from the request or something. And then we can grab it as, what can we grab it as? That's a great question. I think we can read it as an object. Let's try that. So we'll go ahead and say read from JSON async. And I just want an object. Just give me an object back. And I think this is async, so I need to await it. And then I think to do that, I need to also make the method async, which I'll do that by using this quick fix. So it just appended async to my method signature. So now I have the message that was sent from the browser. So now I just have to take this message and basically just send it back, or just send it over to SignalR. So to do that, we just have to return something. So SignalR service requires a pretty specific format to actually talk to it. And we're just going to use an anonymous object to do this. So I'm going to go ahead and return. And how do you do an anonymous object in C#? It's been a while. I've been doing a lot of JavaScript. I think it's this. Is it this? I think so. It's complaining at me. Maybe I just need to say, so the object itself needs a couple of things. It needs to say target equals. That's basically an event. So I think the app expects the event called new message. So I'll do the same thing here. Why is it complaining? Oh, you know why? Because it's it thinks I want to return an HTTP response, but no, I'm just going to return an object. Okay, so it's going to stop complaining. And then I think the other thing that this object needs to have is arguments equals. And then the arguments is like an array of stuff. So how do you do that? Is it new? It's like this. Does that work? No. Object. Okay, maybe it's like that. And there's only going to be one argument, I think, which is this message. If I can spell it right. That should be it, I think. So, yeah, this looks okay. I know there's one more step, which is, yeah, I'll kind of quickly go over here and go back to our quick start. So the quick start comes with this kind of like this magical, not really magical, but we kind of host a like a version of this chat interface for you, so you don't have to build it yourself. So if you click that, it'll basically open this GitHub Pages thing, and yeah, it'll give you a UI. So what I need to do here is, because my app is running locally currently, and this thing is running in GitHub Pages, I know that I need to set up cores in my Azure function before this will work. So to do that, I'm going to hop over here to my settings, local settings.json again. And I'm just going to quickly put in a host section. And I've done this enough times that I think I remember how to do this. So it's going to be cores, and I'll paste in this thing. I think that you can't have the slash. And then I also have to say cores credentials is true. SignalR, the client, kind of needs this because it needs, you know, like it tries to send cookies and stuff if there's any. So so the cores with credentials needs to be on before that will work. So I've done that. I've saved it. So I'm gonna just press F5 and run it. And then while that's running, make sure I remove my breakpoint. I don't need that anymore because it's totally going to work. First try. All right, so it's up and running. So I have my two endpoints, and let's see if it works. Let's go over here. I'm going to go ahead and refresh this page. It's going to ask for a URL of my function app. It's localhost. Give it a username. I'll just be Anthony, and it's connected. So, so I'll just type, "Hey there," and it looks like that's working. Sweet. So just to really test this out to make sure this really is working, I'll go ahead and start a new browser, and need this URL. Paste it in. Okay. Also, Anthony. Hello. And you can see that both of the browsers got it. So this thing is working. And is there more we want to talk about? I don't know. I think it's. I think that's pretty good. I'll push this up to GitHub so that you all can see this code. But really, yeah, that's how hopefully easy it is to get started with .NET 5 in Azure Functions, as well as to build a little, you know, real-time chat app using SignalR service. I'll chat with you later.